Architecture Codex. If you want to see more, like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe.
There is no more influential modern house design than Ludwig Mies van der Rohe's Farnsworth House along the Fox River in Plano, Illinois. You can argue correctly that Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright is more famous, but most architects don't have dramatic waterfalls flowing through their sites, and fortunately there have not been a lot of copies of Falling Water. You can argue that Villa Savoy by Le Corbusier came first of all the modern houses and spawned all those bleached Long Island houses by Richard Meyer and the New York Whites. These seem to be limited to vacation beach homes for the elite and not a house meant for everybody. And you can argue that Philip Johnson got there first, stealing Mies's thunder with his glass house. But really, the glass house was an illegitimate offspring of the Farnsworth house. So any architect copying the glass house was merely extending that bastard lineage. The Farnsworth house is the true father. But if you look back at American houses prior to the Farnsworth house being introduced at the 1946 Museum of Modern Art show run by Philip Johnson, and afterwards, you will see a distinct change. Now, I am not proclaiming that most homes built after 1946 imitated the Farnsworth house. Indeed, most homes were built with the traditional wood frame boxes and pitched roofs and small windows inserted in clapboard sheathed walls, whether they were ranch, Cape Cod, Center Hall Colonial, or any other style. But most houses custom designed by architects of this new generation, the Depression era and World War II veterans, looked towards the Farnsworth house as inspiration. They believed that simple modern designed housing would bring more private home ownership to the masses, and by shedding ornament and unnecessary expense, and keeping the house a simple machine such that it could be maintained by the nuclear family living there without housekeepers, then the American dream would become more accessible. Popular Mechanics and similar magazines were the most widespread do-it-yourself medium at the time, and you will see page after page of simple floor plans, great rooms that combined kitchen, dining, and living into a single space, and of course, flat roofs. In Architecture Codex video number 54, I compared the Philip Johnson glass house with Eero Saarinen's Miller house. Most people naturally pair the glass house with the Farnsworth house, but this is Architecture Codex, and we don't follow those rules. In that video, I expanded on the idea of the new flat-roofed modern home being pioneered by many great yet unfamous architects, my own mentor being among them. But the lineage for all those homes started with the Farnsworth house. What was it about the Farnsworth house that caught the imagination of so many other young architects? I think one of the reasons was that it formed a house out of the compelling construct that was Mies's own Barcelona Pavilion, introduced to the world just 17 years earlier in 1929. In the pavilion, Mies's slogan of "less is more," which was actually an instruction given to him by his mentor, Peter Behrens, was manifest in the simple luxury materials and geometry of points, lines, and planes. A compelling design, but it had no real function. The Farnsworth house gave that design concept a purpose. Ludwig Mies had designed many houses in Germany early in his career, but nearly all predated the Barcelona Pavilion. They were modern and boxy, but not nearly as simple and transparent as the Farnsworth house. And when he came to the United States, Mies, who was still not famous, was working on institutional and apartment buildings, not single-family homes. While he was engaged to be the chair of the architecture department of what would become IIT, the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, one of his greatest works, Crown Hall, for IIT, Architecture Codex video number 5, was still years away. So when Dr. Edith Farnsworth, approached Ludwig Mies about designing a weekend home along the Fox River in a rural town about 2 hours west of Chicago, he took the commission with the proviso, if it could be fine and interesting. Clearly, Mies saw this as a design opportunity with potentially more freedom than larger commissions might allow, and would push the design to extreme modern purity. Whereas Dr. Farnsworth was looking for a weekend retreat. Perhaps she had an idea she would be sponsoring the very intriguing Mr. Van der Rohe as his patron, but she may not have been prepared for what was to come, her comfort being subordinate to design perfection. There is gossip that Farnsworth and Mies shared a personal relationship, which certainly would have complicated the client-architect relationship, but that is not conclusive. Alex Beam's book, Broken Glass, gives testimony, but most of it is second and third-hand conjecture. On the other hand, the book is very good at detailing the design-build process, the client-architect connection, and the plaintiff-defendant relationship. The situation is so complex, it really didn't need sex to make it any more interesting. Ludwig left his wife and daughters in Germany when he came to America in 1937. Mies was creative, brilliant, quiet, obdurate, and apparently a babe magnet. But, we male architects have that effect on women, so I empathize entirely. His artistic ego allowed him not to follow the rules, and he had a series of female relationships. The most enduring one, albeit not exclusive, was with Laura Marks, who eventually stayed with him until his death in 1969. Many have said that Mies was a man of few words, which was apparently part of his attraction. But I have seen little indication of what I suspect, that his quiet, reclusive reputation was due in part to his not mastering the English language. And even if they did have a personal relationship, it would not be long before Mies would offend and repel Edith by being dismissive of her ideas. Mies is quoted as saying, "Never talk to a client about architecture," because Mies believed they cannot know what is possible and what is not possible. And while I empathize, which is, I guess, why I'm trying to do a German accent for Mies, I would not follow Mies's advice about treat our clients like they are children, because I believe that the design process with the client is an opportunity to spread the gospel of great architecture. And I will take the time to explain and show my clients how I can take their ideas, their hopes, and aspirations and create very good design. Mies would not waste his time. Dr. Edith Farnsworth was an accomplished single woman who admitted that her life outside of work was lonely. The family's lumber wealth allowed her to aspire to be a concert violinist, but after studying in Italy, she concluded she would not be one of the greatest ever and decided to leave music. She entered Northwestern Medical School at a time when the number of women was limited to just 4, and she became an MD in 1938. In her medical career, she was both a practicing physician and a medical researcher. Her research regarding nephritis, a fatal kidney disease at the time, was groundbreaking and led to others developing a treatment and cure. After retiring in 1972, she moved to Italy, where she spent the rest of her life translating Italian poetry into English, Italian and English being just 2 of the 5 languages in which she was fluent. She died in 1977. Originally, she bought 9 acres for the retreat house, but after she had built the house, she saw that there was encroachment with both private development and public parks, and so she bought an additional 50 acres to create a bigger buffer. Still, development in the area had the state building a bridge so close that they used eminent domain to take some of her land. This was the final straw, and in 1972, she sold the house and land to Baron Peter Palumbo, who also bought Frank Lloyd Wright's Kentuck Knob, cited in Architecture Codex video number 50. Palumbo restored and used the house for many years, making some minor interior changes. When Palumbo put it up for auction, one prospective buyer wanted to purchase it and then move the house. This prompted a group to buy the house with the intent to preserve it. They donated it to the National Trust, but unlike Philip Johnson's glass house, which he personally donated to the National Trust and endowed, they have not been able to endow the house. Therefore, there is constant fundraising in order to restore and preserve the house. The building has been open to the public since 2004. The basic principles of the house are not complex. All the parts are reduced to their most simple geometry. Their horizontal planes, floors, and roofs are flat and white-edged. There are columns that support the structure reduced to the naked but painted steel I-beams that do all the work. Mies did not hide the structure in the decoration, but let the structure be the building. Between the flat planes and the vertical lines is open, either glass floor to ceiling, edge to edge, or for the upper terrace, open, at least now. Those things that required privacy or closed-in walls, the bathroom, closets, and fireplace flue, the piping for the kitchen, etc., were pulled away from the perimeter of the building, allowing a complete glass enclosure. This was 1950, so all the glass is single pane, held in place by metal channels and angles, carefully designed by Mies to be as minimal as possible. Today, if I wanted to do something like this, I can actually just call up any of the major window and door manufacturers, such as Marvin or Anderson, and say, this is what I want, this is how big it's going to be, this is how it's going to operate, this is the color, etc., and I can get it with double pane glass or even triple pane glass. They would do all the engineering, fabricate it in a factory, and ship it to the site to be installed by my general contractor. But back then, all the architects, famous or not, designing the modern houses had to design the fixed and sliding glass walls to be built on site, using basic materials, wood, metal, glass, to get the design they wanted. In one way, it was additional responsibility, but it was also another fun challenge, part of the design process. But today, that would just be too much liability to design it that way. Since air conditioning in private homes was not common at this time, the Farnsworth house didn't have any, and it would get blazingly hot in the summer, and nothing would address the humidity. The rigid geometry of the design did not permit deep overhangs on the south to block the summer sun. Ludwig Mies relied too much on deciduous trees to do that work. Natural ventilation was limited to 2 windows in the bedroom area. Perhaps with these and the front doors opened to the screened porch, there might have been sufficient ventilation, but it would not meet our current standards of comfort. The hot air heating system and the radiant floor might have been sufficient, but they took a while to warm up the space, and the consumption of fuel was voracious. Today, we would not even begin to design a house that way because we are preoccupied with comfort and energy efficiency. Every detail, every surface of Mies's design is actually a heat bridge from the exterior to the interior. Indeed, insulation and thermal envelope design was only emerging as a concept at this point, and oil was cheap. But freed from these mundane earthly considerations, the result is a gorgeous open plan, a fluid connection among the interior spaces, and an intimate connection with the exterior and the view of the river. Mies once said, "God is in the details." And he had an almost Gothic attitude about this, carefully working out the minimalist details even though no one would see them in certain areas. And the detailed work on this house is stunning and expensive. Each connection is carefully cut and each weld is ground smooth until it disappears, hiding the how. All the steel surfaces were sandblasted and coated before being given 4 coats of white paint, applied so gently there are no brush strokes. Today we would powder coat them for this effect. But all this careful, creative, and pioneering finessing propelled the design into abstraction, which I think remains part of the major appeal of the Farnsworth house. The design lacks one thing that most people would want in their house: occasional privacy. But because this was a weekend house for one person, in Mies's mind, this was not a consideration. There was no need to create privacy from one space or the other, or even from the outside. Privacy from the public was achieved through the curtains along the perimeter, but also the distance created by the land buffer. Yet interlopers, seeking to view Mies's masterwork themselves, would often breach the distance and see Edith, unable to avoid their stares, as helpless as a fish in an aquarium. The most iconic photographs taken before the house was complete showed the open porch without screens, and that design image is forever emblazoned in architecture consciousness. But owing to the severe mosquito problem, Mies had designed a screen system installed a few years after the photographs. And like everything else, it was expensive. It was made of a special nickel mesh with a black frame to punctuate the whiteness of the house frame itself. It appears his crew installed the screen system without compensation even after the famous lawsuit was started, which might indicate that Ludwig Mies was sincere in his design mission to accommodate the sole occupant. That screen system was destroyed in a flood and replaced with a less expensive and less aesthetic system in 1954. But this scenario undoes a major myth of the house, that Mies did not want the porch screened in, and that Dr. Farnsworth had to do it on her own, at least not initially. I mentioned a flood in the early 1950s, but there have been many others. It's one of the things that has plagued the Farnsworth house. Now, in calculating where to put the house, they knew they were in a floodplain, and the first floor was purposely raised 5 feet above the ground to avoid most of the annual floods. This, of course, increased the cost. But there were many other floods that exceeded that 5-foot level, including ones in 1996 and 2008, when the water rose so high above the first floor that severe damage was done to the contents and much of the building. There are many accounts regarding the deterioration of the professional relationship between Farnsworth and Mies. One famous story is about Dr. Farnsworth complaining that the house did not have enough closet space. Mies is reported to have responded that it is a weekend house and she only needs one dress, and he would provide a hook for one hanger to be put on the back of a door. Eventually, a wardrobe was constructed. It also appears that Mies allowed Dr. Farnsworth to use the house when it was not quite finished, and the mechanical system was not properly ventilated. The resulting fuel smell literally left Dr. Farnsworth with a bad taste. These and other issues came up in the lawsuit, but at the core it seems to have been about money. Mies was both the architect and general contractor, and costs rose from his original $45,000 estimate to about $75,000. Multiply all these numbers by 10 if you want to get an idea of their impact in today's dollars. Dr. Farnsworth refused to pay some of the invoices, and Mies sued for about $28,000. Dr. Farnsworth countersued. The rest plays out like the nastiest of divorces, with each party throwing out accusations of the other's malfeasance. I am not in a position to judge. After the hearings started, the attorneys worked out a settlement, Farnsworth losing on fact-finding, but Mies only getting $2,500. The client-architect relationship, and any romance, if there was one, was destroyed. And while she lived in the building on many weekends for about 20 years, Edith Farnsworth could be heard referring to her house as my Mies conception. Cost increases had everything to do with scope creep. For example, the travertine floors being a $20,000 extra that Edith approved later in construction at Mies's insistence. But it also appears that material speculation due to the expanding Korean War drove up some of the costs. And I am sure there are design details that Mies went with because he knew it would be a better building, regardless of the cost. Every architect hopes the owner falls so in love with the building they don't resent the expense. This did not happen here. The final cost came in over 7 times Dr. Farnsworth's original expectation and almost twice Mies's own budget. One could argue that all the bitterness might be worth it for such a seminal piece of architecture, but it is fair to say Edith Farnsworth was not honored to pay for Mies's indulgence. So while the Farnsworth house is equally famous for the acrimony between client and architect and its design, it still represents a goal for many other architects: how to bring high-minded design to the clients in the real world, where people have kids, need storage for their stuff, and want privacy from each other and their neighbors. And that is why the Farnsworth-inspired houses proliferated during the 1950s. Technical issues, particularly with flat roofs, made them less popular in the 1960s. And by the 1980s, these houses were being demolished en masse to make way for McMansions. But recently, their charm has been rediscovered in the trend that newcomers to their excellence call mid-century modern. And today's technology, pioneered by architects of that period, we can restore the homes or build new ones that have leak-proof roofs, energy efficiency, greater comfort, and most even have closets. I'm Michael Molinelli, and this is Architecture Codex.